Ka hua mai te kāwanatanga Pākehā I konei, ka tipu mai I reira tētahi hiehia kia mate te tangata e kia nei he Māori.
They're determined to fight, and we must treat them as a species of savage beasts, which must be exterminated to render the colonization of New Zealand possible.
And that comes with all the other things, you know, the diseases and language shift, culture shift, resource challenges, and ultimately some fighting. All of that just culminated in one really toxic kind of mess, you know.
Pākehā society starts to purport and present Māori as being lesser than, and having that kind of portrayal around the savage, around the Neolithic culture, around, you know, living in the mud hut starts to emerge as a power play that starts to render not only the people but their language as also being inferior.
The native schools are straight out of the colonial playbook. It's quite clear in terms of legislation that it was an active removal of Te Reo Māori in schools, and that it was enacted in physically violent ways.
It was an active campaign against us, and it was state-sponsored terrorism.
The Rangatahi school is administered by the Native Schools branch of the Education Department.
Native school. The name of the school itself gave you some clear indication of the status that was put on those learning institutions.
The morning classes begin, and for the infants, learning to read is the beginning of knowledge.
Will you find birds? See if you can find it there.
And that terminology was used right throughout the Maori schools in New Zealand. Now, how many children would have gone through there at that time? Thousands, thousands. That was a whole generation. They suffered corporal punishment because they spoke their own language.
Every whānau probably does have that story. It might have been their grandparents or their great-grandparents or their great-great-grandparents.
I roto ia mata o Taranaki, I reira no ngā kui e kōrero ana mō o rātou mātua I mauherengia I te kore whakai ki te tuku I a rātou tamariki ki te kura. Nā te mea kāre rātou ngā mātua I hiahia kia kite I a rātou tamariki e patua ana mō te rā reo I a rātou.
Good boy, Bill.
Children learn by doing, by expressing themselves, translating impressions into pictures and pictures into words. The teacher is a guide, and the children gradually acquire the basic skills.
In ornaments This is the way the Rangiwaia kids would always get to school.
Yes, every day, whatever the weather, you'd get at least about 30 to 35 coming from Rangiwaia, maybe more.
And with te reo, in your time, was there much Māori still spoken amongst the kids?
It depended which families they came from. Our family did not want us speaking Māori, they seldom spoke Māori.
We were brought up speaking Māori, didn't know a stick of English, and then going to school getting strapped every day because we forget, you know, and we say a kupu Māori, and our teachers then were from England. Man, they were cruel. And that was a sad time of our lives. And I actually vouched I would never teach my tamariki te reo. I did not want them going through what we went through, you know, but now I'm sorry. But I pick up on the mokos. So it's the mokos, but there's a lost generation.
In the mission schools in the early 1800s, Pākehā immigrants would often blend into Māori communities relatively seamlessly. Pākehā kids would learn and speak te reo alongside their Māori classmates. But in 1867, the Native School Act was passed into law, decreeing that English should be the only language used in the education of Māori children. And everything changed. The Native Schools Code stipulated that, as a rule, the government would appoint a married couple. The husband will act as a master of the school, the wife will be the sewing mistress. The master will be expected to teach the native children to read and write the English language and to speak it.
Scott Hamilton again.
As the century draws to a close and you have this terrible demographic decline amongst Maori and the population is shrinking, you have the rise of that terrible phrase, smoothing the pillow of a dying race, which was often used by colonists, this belief that Maori were doomed to die out by scientific laws.
This assumption that the decline of Māori was natural allowed Pākehā politicians to ignore and excuse the policies which were actually causing the decline of Māori. The fact that taking Māori land contributed to poverty and malnutrition, that the refusal to give Māori equal access to healthcare was contributing to disease.
You have this justification for all these policies which are leading to this terrible population decline in pseudoscientific terms. So for me, that's a really significant thread of discourse that runs through Pākehā New Zealand in the second half of the 19th century, and I think it's been taken up. Well, I don't even know that it ever died out in the 20th century, but certainly it's been taken up with a vengeance by white supremacists in the 21st.
The idea that this was a straight-up race war. Māori lost, Pākehā won, end of the story, Māori just need to get over it. That's not what happened. For one thing, there were a lot of Māori fighting for the government.
And in fact, regular British troops were obliged to hand over much of the face-to-face fighting to Maori allies because they were so much more effective in the bush. My own view is that it was those Maori kupapa, the allies of the government of the Crown, who led to a greater appreciation, greater respect for Maori after the wars were over.
They killed us off for our language. We've survived it. That's the point of Maori. They killed us off for our language. We've survived it.
I tipu mai ahau I roto o ruatahuna. Tino hia ahau ki te haere ki te kura. Nō reira, ka rima o kutau. Ka haere au ki te kura. Ka tae ki te kēti. Ka ki mai taku tunane. Ka kuhu koe I tēnei kēti. Kaua koe e kōrero Māori. Tino mataku mātau I taua wā, nā te tino hāmene pea I runga i a mātau. He rōpū I reira. Te mahi a taua rōpū e hari kōrero pēnei kai te kōrero Māori a mea mā. Nō reira, ka kūmai ana mātau ki roto I te runga, ka ki mai te kai whakaako. E koe, e tu, ka patua o mātau ringa mā te rākau. Kore ana tōku whaia e patu I a mātau. Kore. Nō reira he mea hau katoa e nei kia hau I te kura. He aha te otinga, kua kore kōrero, kua kore he whakaaro.
Te wai au, haere nei ki te kura, haere ki te ngahere, ki te tiki, kareo, te Pākehā, Super Jack, e ono ngā waputanga, rere ana te toto. Rere ana te toto. And when you are caned and whipped for speaking Māori, it's virtually impossible to really share the feelings that you get 50, 60 years later.
So when you beat a child, we understand more about what that does now. When you train people and you give them this association of physical pain with speaking a language, that resides as a trauma in them.
Accordingly, I subscribe to the view that Māori researchers should be proactive in researching those opportunities, those possibilities that would create change for Māori. Because no one else is going to do it. It's like a lot of things. People say, oh, I can't do that. But if you don't do it, who's going to do it? The lady next to you? Honest. And this applies to all of us. You are not a small person. Everyone in this room has got not only the courage, but the ability to tell Mallard a few things about his kōrero and stuff. And to tell your own MPs, get out from under the petticoats. Have a life. There's a life outside of the petticoats. Because no one else is going to do it. It's bad enough that some research is being ignored. The point is, we Māori are an endangered species. You know, they march to save the whales, the tree, 100-year-old building, all those things, and let the Māori mate. In fact, they can try and kill us, with their programs and so on. We have survived the marginalisation and schooling of the 19th centuries, where we weren't allowed to do maths and physics and stuff, kept on all the dumb subjects. The Tohunga Suppression Act, we survived. You know, they had our own people laughing at our tohunga. The effect of the Tohunga Suppression Act was to make them look like gullywogs. Our own people laughed in the 1910, in that time, at the tohunga. Their mana was completely destroyed. Imagine that, the carriers of your knowledge. In today's time, that's like all the priests and ministers, all the teachers, all the professors, all the nurse doctors, all the top whatevers, gone. We know best. And that's the equivalent of what the Tohunga Suppression Act did. But it did more than that. it made a laughing stock of them. How can we value Māori knowledge if that's been done to our mothers, our fathers? So we've survived that. We've survived the public beatings for speaking Māori language in the first part of the 20th century. That's what happened to my mother. Here it goes again, and again, and again. Go e kōrero Māori. Don't speak Māori in this school. Takapau primary. You hit someone, they get a message. So I grew up in Takapau, ka tō mai mātou ngā tamariki kōrero Pākehā. But our parents, kōrero Māori ki a rātau anu. I grew up hearing Māori all the time. All my aunties walking down the street, we could pick up the odd word, like broken pants, or something key like that. Yeah, I still remember. And, no, I won't go there, but it was the reality. They were taught naughty language, but they can't stop talking, so they kept talking, but English to us. Now that's Takapau, where it was half, or 3/4, or 4/4. It was a lot of quarters. Imagine the effect that Sir had in the village. Every day, some new rule. Every day, the kids take the rule home. We're not allowed to wear that. We have to line up and do this. We don't have prayers. All these kind of things. They go home and they tell their parents. And the parents start to change their houses around, their life around. And on Sundays, they took their best food over to his house. He was God. Sir became God, white God, and right God. We listened to Sir. Sir was the law. Imagine a Sir in every village converting us. And all these things we've survived. That is the point of my coming here today. Don't waste it. We've survived it, but colonisation still goes on.
Aotearoa is Māori land, and we never ever gave up that right to control and have authority over ourselves.
Time bomb ticking, no time to waste. Ready to blow, mass confusion. Time to go the groove with the future. Chill the situation, got the nation. Misinformation, Māori people are disparate minority. Race relations #1 priority. Politics think they've got the solution. I ain't no freaking revolution, no mountain pot can make me the same. I just said common color people game. Yo, check out the damn Māori crew.